Okay, so as with every third Friday Family History Show, Miss Holly T. Hansen, the Gen teacher and president of Family-History-Expos, joins us and shares tips on family history research and roots travel and to help you discover your family. And today she's joining us with a special guest, genealogist Ruby Coleman. They're going to be teaching us about how to use the census to research family history. And as you know, Holly is one of our Big Blend experts. You can read her articles on blendradioandtv.com and nationalparktraveling.com. But I encourage you to go to her website, Family-History-Expos.com. She's got great books on there, including one she co-authored. It's called In-Depth Census Research Guide. And so she's got video tutorials, all kinds of good stuff on there to help you. And very excited. She's got a story about an article on how to use census for your family history if you go to blendradioandtv.com. You'll see her in the expert department. So welcome back, Miss Holly. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm happy. I'm so glad to be here.
It's Happy Holly.
I know, happy.
I know your name is changing. It's Happy Holly from now on, the Gen teacher. That's it. We're moving the miss over. You're just going to take the miss out and put the happy in. I like that. It's good to have you back here. And Ruby, welcome to the show. How are you? I won't
I'm
sing
fine,
anymore,
thank
I promise. Good to have you here. And I know I love the name Ruby. Our friend Hollywood historian Steve Schneikert, we always talk about the Ruby Reds. Do you hear a lot of that? The click of the Wizard of the Oz? Yeah. The Wizard of the Oz. That's a whole new thing. Well, welcome to the show. Ruby, you're up in Nebraska, North Platte, and I was reading that you're the president of the North Platte Genealogical Society. Have you been doing, family history research for your entire life? Is it something that started for you as a child?
It started when I was in my late teens, and I hate to admit this, but I'm 75 years old. So I've been doing it a long time and experiencing everything from cranking microfilm reels to writing letters to, going to libraries, doing anything, which we still need to do, but Internet has made a valuable change in our research.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, it does.
I can't imagine. I mean, I've been where they have that blue filmy stuff in that little machine, and it's like X-rays. You're looking at this weird film. I remember that, and I'm not saying how old I am, but I remember that. You could go in the back room in the library and play with that microfiche or whatever they called it.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting when you think about how we've changed.
Mm-hmm.
And that changes things. Holly, doesn't that change how you work? I mean, it's changed for you now, and suddenly people have to learn computer programs, right? Because don't we have programs now?
Yes, it's like using a chisel and stone to a pencil. From a keyboard, from a pencil to a keyboard, it's similar. I mean, it's amazing what we can do. And then from a keyboard to a smartphone.
Really?
So
now
just in my lifetime,
wow,
I learned to write with a pencil.
I
now just learned a keyboard. I just learned a keyboard right off the bat.
Yeah. I wonder what, in the future, our fingers are going to be long.
I think our thumb is going to fall off.
My kids can text with their thumbs faster than I can type.
See? That's interesting.
And I'm a pretty fast typer.
That's interesting. I had to write our address down yesterday. We were doing our storage unit stuff. It was a day, I can't remember when it was, and I was handwriting it. And the lady she couldn't read anything I wrote at all. And she's like, "Are you a doctor?" And I'm like, "No, you don't want me to be a doctor."
But I'll write you a prescription.
I know. Wow, so excited to talk about census. I remember people would, come knocking on the door, and I used to think, what's it to you about what's going on in our, how many people we have? I kind of thought it was a little bit of an invasion of privacy in some ways. And now I realize that these kind of things are actually very useful. And reading your article, Holly, I didn't realize that, the marshals were involved. So this is something that's been going, the census has been going on for a long time in this country.
Yep, since the beginning, yeah.
Wow. So the census, so basically it's about people, it's keeping track of our population now.
Right. Well, it keeps track of
it
keeps track of your population, but it's also used for social statistics and representation and things like that by the government. And basically that's the way it started in 1790. But as a genealogist, we use it as our roadmap to get to other places to travel with our ancestors and find them in other records. So it's extremely valuable.
Is this something that is like as soon as you start to even trace a family member or look for them, this would be one of the very first things you do is use a census?
Yes.
Sometimes it is, yeah, because I like to map them out as I'm following them and to see where they are, how their household has increased, decreased, changes in their social status, their occupation, the migrations that they're going through. And once I establish this little roadmap called census, then I can start looking into other records like probate and land records and marriage records, birth records, death records, and all of that. But the census for me, is a roadmap.
Okay.
Well, and you keep coming back to it. You come back to it over and over. We're doing a band in April that's dedicated to the census. And, researchers, they learn about the census really early in starting this. But we're calling it Take Another Look because there is so much information. And the census is more than a list of names. There are other schedules, and we're going to go over all those, the manufacturing, the agriculture. And Ruby's going to be teaching at this series, but it's a week long, 2 hours. We're going to have classes 2 hours every morning. And then if you come to Salt Lake City with us, we'll spend the rest of the day in the Family History Library looking. And so 2 hours every morning and then 6 days of actual research. And we'll have professionals there to help you, experts there to help you with your own personal family history questions. And so we're really going through the census with a fine-tooth comb. I've never seen or participated in a series of classes this.
This is interesting because I know this everyone is April 8th through 13th, and Holly's got all kinds of events happening. She's got the Ask the Pros every week, the third Friday Family History Show with us, and then an International Family History Expo in August, and a Family History Library Research Retreat in November. This one in April, you're saying it's Family History Library Research Retreat and Census, but it's at the library. So is a lot of the records for Census in the library?
Oh, yes.
Well, for the U.S. Census, it's 100% there. For the English Census records, they have that. Now, I haven't looked at a lot of the other ones, but we were just told yesterday that Norway, 3 really nice censuses have come online through MyHeritage for Norway, which that hasn't been available to us before. But there are a lot. There's some census records that we've just, it's been a year, just became available or made known to us for Germany. And we were always told they didn't have a census in Germany, but they called it a different thing. It wasn't called a census. It was just a different thing, but they've been identified. There was a book published that I think Roger Minert did it, and all this information, amazing. So we're going to focus in April. We're going to focus on the United States Census, but we're also broadcasting it. So you can sign up to come and be with us in Salt Lake, or you can sign up for our Take Another Look series, which includes only the classes. But you can do that from wherever you are in the world. Just sign in, and you'll be able to see our PowerPoint presentations and hear our voices and type questions using the chat. Technology, and so it'll be great. So people who can't physically get to Salt Lake can still participate.
I think this will save people a lot of time and a lot of dead ends. Because when you start researching something like this, you can end up going in all different directions and not really knowing or not having a plan on how to even go from step to step to step.
Well, one thing I have discovered is that when people, particularly on the Internet, they're finding, say, the 1850 census, and they find their ancestor and they jot down their age and were born and the people in their household, and then they don't look any further. But there's a lot of columns and clues that are on that page they're looking at that they should be looking at and studying. So, and the census has changed. My 2 presentations on the federal census, the first 2 days, will be 1790 to 1890, and then 1900 to 1940. And the most significant changes in the census occurred between 1900 and 1940. But when you look at the world in general, there were more changes in that time period, considering that there was World War I, the Great Depression, and then as we were taking the 1940 census, there was the impending World War II. So the resources are extremely valuable, and year by year, decennial year by decennial year, in other words, every 10 years when it was taken, there were changes in the format and the forms, and people need to know that. They need to understand those columns and what they mean.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I see.
And now, did anybody lie on their census? I mean,
oh yes, they did. And the census was also padded. In 1857, when the territorial census was taken in Minnesota, they wanted to gain statehood, and so they had just created 5 or 6 or so new counties in the southwest part, and they populated them, but nobody was there. But they populated them on the territorial census with names, so that the federal government would think that they were ready for statehood.
They did that in Utah. They did that.
Yes,
in Utah
they did that
as well.
in Utah. And they actually put dead people on it.
They went to the cemeteries and put all of the. They put all of the people who were buried in the cemeteries in the census. Quite interesting.
Yes,
that's funny.
People that died on their way to Utah, they recorded them so they could gain state. And this is not unusual. And during the Reconstruction era, with the carpetbaggers who were taking the federal censuses in the South, it was not uncommon for them to omit things people they did not want on there. And,
oh my
and
gosh,
things like
that's
that.
funny.
I told you there's scandal in family history.
Well, there's scandal wherever there's people.
Well, that to me, this is
that's what history is. One big scandal.
Holly, do you get when you help people? Because I know not only are you helping people online with the tools, but you also help people when they're doing their family history research. Do you enjoy it just as much digging into somebody else's history?
Do you, Holly? I enjoy it. Yeah, I do. I kind of get absorbed
in it. I enjoy it more than they do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I do
get
too.
Into helping someone, and with all of the research that I've done, here's an example. There was a gentleman that I was helping one day, and we were going through all the series. Well, I recognized the name, and it connected with the Osmond family,
Mm-hmm.
And I realized that it was this is a famous family, right? And so I just thought, look at this, and I'm just showing him and how he comes back down and how he's related relationship to Donny Osmond, and he didn't think it was cool.
So what? He's not a little rock and roll.
He wasn't born during that era.
So he's a little.
I have to be.
He was
I have
not.
to be careful that I don't just take over for him, But yeah, it is exciting.
Well,
There's so
Holly had actually mentioned, too, that there's other things like the ag schedules, the industry and manufacturing mortality. I'm also going to cover those, plus the deaf census. That census actually makes you want to have deaf people in your family because it is so extensive with information. And I will cover Native American censuses.
Oh, wow.
And what we call the DDD, which is defective, dependent, and delinquent. And those were for people who were considered deaf, mutes, idiots, insane, people imprisoned. It was for only $18.80. But
well, I'm
you
sure
can't
my
leave any
father's
stone
in there.
unturned. You just can't leave any stone unturned. I mean, when you're doing this, you really have to do it.
And those days they did say those words, right? They did call.
They did.
Yes,
wow.
They called them idiots. They were idiots and insane. Now, after studying this for quite a while, the insane were considered people who could maybe be trained a little bit.
I needed to clarify that because we're going to get emails.
Yeah.
You're not being politically correct. Well, back then they weren't.
No, and the idiots were actually considered people that were not trainable, that just, the family just kept them on or dumped them off somewhere, which is sad. But they called them deaf and dumb, and they were actually deaf and mute because they either signed with their hands or if they had learned sign language, or they couldn't talk because they couldn't talk, that they were known by society as deaf and dumb, and they really were not dumb at all.
Wow.
No.
Have you heard about this? I know that I don't know if this goes with the census, but just you were talking about how they would dump family members. No, because I've heard, and I don't know if this is true, that back in the day, if someone died in your family and you didn't have money, they would roll them up in a carpet and throw them in a dumpster somewhere, or take them in the carpet, throw them in the river or something. And
I don't know about that.
It was from a comedian that I was listening to, so I'm just saying. Maybe.
I'm not sure about that. I do know that one of my husband's ancestors, actually his great-grandmother, had died of typhoid fever, which was rampant. Ooh. She was like 35. The whole family was sick with various maladies. And so her husband rolled her body up in a shroud, in a sheet, put it on the front porch, and there was a hearse that went by and picked up, and this was written about in the newspaper, picked up her body, and then they had a service much later when everybody felt well.
Bring out your dead.
Yeah, they stand there with that bell. Bring out your dead. Bring out your dead.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
I saw that on Deadwood.
But how but they didn't. Whenever there was an epidemic like that, and it's freaky, how those epidemics would go through a community, and then to have to, just leave them on a porch like you're saying, or bring out your dead. That is like how hard that must have been to go through that, and emotionally. And I think back in those days that they didn't even have the time to even allow themselves to feel that kind of pain.
But life just had to keep going.
I remember our house being quarantined because we got the measles, and the police came and they put up this big yellow sign with a big red X on it.
No way.
And they nailed it on the front door.
My mother-in-law saved all of them that were nailed on her door. That her children were quarantined because they had chickenpox or measles or mumps or something like that. And some of the censuses will also show if when the enumerator arrived, if they were suffering from some type of disease or malady, and some of them had arthritis or something of that sort.
Wow.
But actually, my fourth presentation is on territorial and state censuses, and there were a lot of state censuses that were taken, and they bridged between the decennial years plus when we lost the 1890 for all practical purposes. They will bridge between that and 1900. So these are just wonderful. And then finally, when Holly is so tired of me talking about all of this during that week, I will be talking on supplemental information. And so these will really help with missing periods of time when you can't find your ancestor, or if there's missing enumerations, which we know happen. But we will be looking at veteran schedules and school census records, tax records, voter registrations, and also during each of these, I don't avoid the Native Americans or the African Americans.
Oh,
so
good.
I do give quite a bit of information as I go along through this about and free people of color. I've done extensive research on those. So I give examples in each one of these, which I hope will be very helpful and will give people the feeling that they can find something.
It's very helpful, and the handouts that go with these classes are considerable. It's not
Mine
just
are.
an outline. Yeah, they're considerable. Yeah. And so, anywhere from 7 or 8 to 20 pages of information for each.
Now, what
hour
happens if we can't go to Salt Lake City? Can people log in online and be part of it? Because I know you do so much online, Holly.
We do. So you can sign up for the series. It's called Take Another Look, and you can register for it and just come online with us every morning. We'll see when we do it in Salt Lake. We'll be broadcasting from the Family History Library in Salt Lake City. Ruby will be in North Platte. She'll be teaching from North Platte.
Wow.
We'll be in Salt Lake.
I might even be in my pajamas.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
It could be.
You got to put your business card, fold it up over your laptop so that the little camera can't see you.
No, but they are going to see. But if you're in your pajamas, that's cool. You got to have like candy canes or something cool on your pajamas. You got to have family history pajamas. I wanted to ask about the census and the ag records because I think that's interesting because doesn't that also go into the days of slavery and the plantation?
The egg schedules. Well, there's slave schedules. There's slave schedules.
Wow.
And the agricultural schedules are totally different than the slave schedules.
Okay.
But I do have information that I am sharing that I show. Hopefully it will help people, particularly that have some type of African American ancestry, that just prior to the Civil War in the South, in very select areas, they did take an enumeration to know more about the slaves and particularly free people of color.
But
so
did they really changed their names?
Some did, and some did not change their names. In one of my families, I have traced. I am not African American, but I have traced in one of my families back to about 1780 in Spotsylvania County, Virginia. In the will, my ancestor left his daughter, who is my ancestor, a black slave because she was chattel property, and her increased forever. They didn't think slavery was going to die out, and he named her Hannah. Turns out Hannah was a young girl, and they took her to northeastern Tennessee, and she produced children, and she was still alive when the Civil War broke out. She was old, but she was alive. And so when she was emancipated, the family asked her what name she wanted to take, and because she was quite elderly, where she wanted to live. And she said she wanted to live on the plantation. She wanted to be buried in the family graveyard, and she wanted to be known by their surname because that's all she'd known all her life.
Wow.
And everything happened except the graveyard, and they buried her on the other side of the fence.
Wow.
See that?
Wow. Okay, so I want to go back also in regards to, not only the slave records, but also the sharecroppers too. One thing we noticed in some of the interviews we've done over the years is that a lot of African Americans are trying to not only find out more about their history, and sometimes they really get stumped, and depending on what happens in regards to the ownership of their ancestors, or if they got free, and so everything changes from there. But they're trying to find out, and I know this Paula J is part of this too, Holly, is they're trying to find out what tribe they are from. There's this movement for that. Did the census records ever say they came in on this ship from this area? Is there anything like that?
No.
Yes, there is to a certain extent if they kept it. You may find business records like from that have survived. It would be very rare, but they would be in manuscript departments.
Not the U.S. federal census. It doesn't do
No,
that.
but you would find business records maybe from the auction houses if they still exist. I have not explored this. they would probably be in manuscript form in some academic center or
I've seen them on auction
archives.
lists, and when the ship comes in and they say there's
Yeah.
going to be an auction, and
But they
it'll
don't
tell you the
really
ship.
tell a lot about their names or exactly where they have come from. But some slave owners, large plantations, particularly the master who had many plantations, sometimes he kept accounts and diaries, and he would show their value and their age.
Mm-hmm.
And you will find this also in wills and inventories.
Oh, wow. So they're
you
treating
can go
them like
back
livestock, basically.
Exactly.
Well, they were chattel property. They were not any different than livestock. They
Oh.
were not considered real estate. They were personal property.
Wow.
They weren't any different than the bed that they left somebody.
Wow. Wow, that's
And,
amazing. Not in a positive way.
The census really can open the door there for you. So
Wow.
you know, okay, he was a slave owner. And then you can try to find more about them.
Right.
And there were also inbreeding. Probably the worst thing that I ever found was an ancestor of mine. There was a certain time period just prior to the Civil War in Virginia when there was a short-term law that they had to go into the courthouse and register every birth. And I was appalled to find an ancestor whose wife gave birth like in April, and then the slave gave birth in November, and off by her name it said father, and it was him. So there was miscegenation was rampant. It's not unusual.
Wow.
It's like I've said before, that the past is a foreign place.
Yeah.
And you really have to read the newspapers, study the history, get into that mindset, because we don't comprehend it. There isn't anything in my life that prepared me to understand or handle how that could even be possible. But as you study and spend time in the records, you begin to have some understanding and really see how far we've come.
Wow.
And we've still got a long ways to go.
That's what they call it, like this.
I'm gonna research.
That's the circular family tree.
No, I'm gonna research my father's and mother's history, because there's a lot of scandal.
Holly, we could do a whole series.
There's a scandal.
There's
scandal.
I mean, it's thick.
It's bad.
I mean, it goes over borders.
Well,
it has
you're
name
doing
changes.
a story mission for me. We could do a family history mission for you.
Yeah, there it is.
Really, once in Yuma, I met my dad's other wife, who was not my mother, but was also a wife at the same time. Who my mom was his wife,
and he was dating your mom's
twin sister.
That's not a family scandal.
I know. Well, this family history has really opened up like a kind of like interest. That's fascinating. But people are people, right? And we act in different ways. And like you're right, Holly. I mean, it was one of the first conversations we ever had was family history can be painful and it can also be healing. And the reality is we have to realize those were different times. People were different. But humans are humans, and we do some interesting things, that's for sure. I want to go back to also on the census on the Native American side, because I know that that's also very difficult, is to find family history of Native Americans. And with the census, does that come in when they rounded them all up and said, okay, we're taking you off your land? Well,
there were different types of Native American censuses. There were the ones that actually the natives took, and then at various times that the federal government took. You have to use them all in conjunction with other records like the Dawes roll and different things like that. But if they lived on a reservation, they were normally recorded. And my lecture also goes into the fact that the government wanted them to be educated. So at the same time as some of these censuses, there were different types of schools for them, and they would be shown on school census records. So you have to look in a variety of places there. And some of them, if they were living in an area that was a military fort, they're going to be shown on that census. So it's sort of a guess, and by golly, and thank goodness for indexes, but
right. And they had
they
had their Native American names, and they had their
right, and sometimes a
Christian
Native American name and an English name or a Christian name. And then it's interesting because there is one particular census year for Native Americans that they asked to name if this is the first wife, second wife, or third wife, which actually, signaled that because their marriage customs were totally different. And I use examples from the 5 civilized tribes, which we predominantly know as the Cherokee, Choctaw, etc. And I also use the northern tribes like the Sioux and the Crow and the Cheyenne and those different tribes to show the differences. And there were definite differences, and there was so much intermarriage among the 5 civilized tribes that alone makes it very difficult to research.
What about the military side too? When you were talking about that, a lot of Native Americans and African Americans served in our military, so that may help too for getting their records.
It does.
Yeah.
Well,
it does
what about
help.
the military records when the military in more, the Cold War, World War I and II, when people are moving around a lot, up to now. I mean, if families keep getting shipped off to different countries. What happens with that? It's like, you're here one day.
We have the consulate and the embassy records. We have the government employees overseas that I'm going to have examples for to show how they were treated during the census time, the federal census year, particularly like 1940.
It's very fascinating when these classes are taught. Ruby has extreme examples, wonderful, a lot of examples, so you can actually see what the records look like, and she explains the columns and what everything means and how that adds up to evidence of things. Where if you don't understand how the records work, you can look at them and miss a lot of detail that's there just because you're not familiar with the record and how they work. So there's a lot of good information in there.
So it's interesting. I mean, all these different avenues. Do medical records connect with the census other than the dead people?
The mortality in some years will show, in all years will show the cause of death. I mean, did they really know?
Okay, so that's where it goes. Okay.
There's even concern that Prince Albert did not die of typhoid, but of maybe Crohn's or cancer or something like that. So you don't really know, is this true or not? But if you can look and see there was a diphtheria epidemic and your ancestor died of diphtheria, then that is going to be helpful. Plus reading the newspapers or history accounts of that particular time period. The mortality schedules were taken 1850 through 1880. And the information is limited. It's a 1-year period, but it can be very, very helpful.
Anything you can find. I mean, you're being a
detective.
You're a detective, yeah.
You are a detective.
It's cool because you talk about this too, Holly, in your article, and then also just over shows and our conversations, as you say, you need to think like that person. Like you need to think what it was like for them, because then you start to feel what their actions are. So you use that as one of your detective skills, is to put yourself in their shoes, so go ahead.
And back to the scandals and the things that you do find. I think that like my children and my grandchildren are more accepting of this. I'll say, guess what? I found this and this and this, and isn't that unbelievable? No. Because to them, I mean, this is, life is different today, but yet it's not, and they're more accepting of this. than I am.
Well, we're not so closed-minded. I mean, if you think back to,
Right.
The Puritan days, we all started our history as Puritans, and just even saying that, it's like, we're so pure.
What's really interesting, Puritans, is they're in court all the time for scandals.
Oh, I know.
They are. The court records are full of it. They had this expectation and these laws because no one kept them.
Well,
so they're in court all the time. It's quite fascinating.
I think the laws were a little bit too much. Like we're human. We're not pure.
Well, they were, but they were trying to. I mean, I have an ancestor that was excommunicated from church for holding a female's hand and consoling her.
Wow.
And one of my favorite books that I own in this library of mine is Sex in Middlesex, and Middlesex was a county in Massachusetts, and it's like the 1600s, and one of my daughter's ancestors is in there, and he was in and out of court all the time because he was having affairs with women. So, and when I told her that,
related. I know.
She just gave me the deer eye stare, like so.
Wow.
So, and then you find that people are doing the DNA, and they may relate to that person if it goes back that far, which it normally doesn't. But
or back to the circle.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one big
40%
circle.
DNA is showing that 40% of the research that's on paper is incorrect. DNA.
Okay, but then DNA, half of these DNA tests are turning out to not be as correct as what's on paper and what you can research yourself. Wow.
It's all very interesting.
I think it's cool.
So,
I mean, just because
funny.
even if you get dead ends, you're finding out all these stories and you're finding out things,
Gossip.
and then you learn each time. Don't you learn more? Like you start to learn the history of the world. I mean, listening to both of you, you're like, you know the different Native American tribes, all these different wars and, the different eras and changes in the world. Like, it's fascinating.
You become more tolerant and more understanding because we're all the same, really. We are. And as you learn your history.
Yeah, Holly said history, laws, geography. We have to study all of that. Well,
That's cool.
I do anyway, because
we do. If you want to be successful, you do.
I have a searching, a wandering mind. It's like why, and so I need to go back and learn why.
Do
why
you
did
spy
they
on your
leave
neighbors
it?
to see what's going on?
No, because I have
boring.
I have a
the
huge
stuff.
privacy fence, so I don't see my neighbors, and they don't
They
see
know
me.
that you're a genealogist.
I have to say, when we started living in Kenya, and Kenya at that time it was like 49 tribes, and so you could be 10 minutes down a dirt road, and the way they looked and dressed and spoke was completely different, and the two tribes that were next to each other most likely did not speak to each other because they didn't understand each other. And it was like going back in history, even though, it was, like today kind of thing. And it was really interested to see how segmented each of the tribes were, even down to the colors that they used. For symbolism and the way they spoke and what they ate and what they would gather when they went to gather food. It was really like going back into history, like going way back when, and realizing, okay, how do you think like they do? How would you live in the bush and survive like they do if you're going to use the modern day mind? It didn't work. You had to go and start to think like they did, and then if you could put yourself there, you started to understand the customs that they had that at first when you hear about them or see them are kind of shocking sometimes. And then you start to go, okay, well, if you really believe this, and you understand why they did that. But you're coming from halfway around the world with a whole different history and upbringing, and it is hard to put your mind in a totally different place in order to understand what somebody else is doing. It really is. It's hard.
It is. It's learning a foreign language. It's even more difficult than that, because just to go to a foreign country and learn the language, you can learn to speak it, but you still don't understand the culture. It takes time.
Yeah.
And for you to understand, it's like occupational history of people. Miners, they went from mine to mine to mine, state to state to state. They're a little easier to research because they're going to be in these certain areas.
Right.
It helps you. Glass blowers, there's only a few of those, and so if a person is in that industry, they're going to be living in a specific place. Or weavers, but if you're a farmer,
you're all
a little
over.
Different.
The census, though, this brings up another, when she was talking about the foreigners, this brings up another problem in the fact that the census enumerators were Anglo. I mean, they were English people who supposedly knew how to write. I do question that. And how to spell, which I also question. But when they would hit a household with a German family, maybe named Steinkover, how did they spell it? These people were speaking a broken language, a dialect. And so you're at the mercy of that enumerator who thought that he or she was writing it down correctly.
That's what
I
family
have
an
example
of. We're
I have an example of an ancestor. Their name was Schwartz, and when they don't show up in the 1870 census, but they show up as like Swarty.
Yes. I bring up examples.
My dad's family name was Maschler, but they changed it to Mashler, Mashler. For whatever reason, they left that extra C out of there. And I know that my grandmother showed me stuff that this is what your real name is. And I would have liked to have been called Moshler or whatever it was, as opposed to my nickname in school being mashed potatoes.
Mashed potatoes, yeah. But they're all living up near you, Holly. All the Mashlers are up in your country.
Yes.
Yep. I'll have to watch for them.
Yeah, they're out there. They're all lawyers and journalists. Go figure. And musicians, yeah. That's interesting.
Well, I wanted to just mention in the year 2000, when the census was being taken, I was living in the far north area of Nebraska, and I would drive every week about 20 miles across the border to the Rosebud Indian Reservation to work. And the missionaries at the LDS church there had volunteered to take the census. And they were quite appalled because even now, in this day and age, these were Teton Sioux for the most part, but they don't understand their relationship. So it was very difficult for them to get through to them. Is this your daughter? Is this your son? Is this your aunt? They discovered that an aunt was shown as referred to by them as a grandmother. So, and we're talking about the year 2000. We're 21st century.
Wow. And I have a brother.
If you apply that when we go back to the older Native American censuses, you're wondering, is this really correct?
Yeah, I have a brother who was a foster brother that lived with us. That's a Navajo, and everyone's his sister, his cousin, or his aunt. They're, he has two brothers. Period. That's physically he has two brothers, but he'd say, "Oh, my sister's coming to see me." And it took me a while to as a young person, it took me a while to figure out, how they call relationships is not the same as what we do.
Right.
And then you figure it out.
Yeah.
You can figure it out.
I have a Jamaican friend who calls me sis. And we're all sisses.
Yeah.
Well, my son has Cherokee ancestry, and that is the 5 civilized tribes. And they have a matrilineal society. So everything actually refers to the female, which makes it very difficult when you go back through older records. And if you are truly researching it correctly, you're going to show the matrilineal lineage before you do, the father's side, which is...
Yeah, see, that's how it should be.
When you say...
it's very strange.
When you say civilized tribe, what do you actually mean by that?
Well, they were the 5 civilized tribes. They were actually more civilized, and they were in the South. They were Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Florida. They were the Seminole, the Choctaw, the Creek, the Cherokee, and there's one more, Holly. What did I leave out?
The Iroquois.
No,
the Iroquois,
the Iroquois down there.
The
anyway,
Seneca.
they some of them remained in their own nations down there. Most of them took the Trail of Tears or fled before that time period, as his did, southwestward into Arkansas, southern Missouri. Some of the trails went through Missouri, the Trail of Tears also, and then over into what was Indian Territory, or now is Oklahoma. So, but
they had developed language, and they had government.
Yes,
that's why they were.
So that's
more,
why civilized.
Called civilized.
Okay.
They were more civilized than the others. The Moravian missionaries went into the Cherokee Nation rather early, and that shows in their records, as well as the fact that your Cherokee ancestor was more learned. They developed an alphabet while they were natives, and they did their fair share of quarreling and fighting and battles and things like that. They seemed to get along a little bit better, and were more knowledgeable.
They farmed. They farmed. They grew.
So it's kind of more Western in the Western person's mind. Is it's more of that. Because I don't know. I know tribal members that are more, and not just Native American, and Africa and everything, that are more not what you would say is civilized, but they are more civilized than a lot of people I know. Okay. But it wouldn't appear to a Westerner that they're civilized, but they are in certain ways. It's just understanding the way of life. So the Apache, would they be civilized? Because
no, they're not considered. They're not considered as part of the civilized tribes.
You can think of it too as a hunter-gatherer type versus someone who.
Wow. Okay. Well, the Apache, do you know that they started gambling? They have, in the museum in Tucson, they have their playing cards, they have dice, and they started gambling, eons ago. And
they did it with bones. That's nothing new. They've been doing that forever. Yeah.
Wow, cool party animal.
Throwing of the bones.
Yeah, Nancy knows about that. That's amazing. It's so interesting what we can discover, and having these different tools. I think this event is awesome what you guys are doing. And everyone, again, the date is April 8th through 13th, so we can get her going. And we're talking a lot about also all these international records. Of course, we're all like that. We're all connected in some way that way, too. August 5th through 10th is Let Your Light Shine 2019 International Family History Expo. And that one, Holly, that's going to be all online like last year's?
Yes, it is. 100% online. Yeah, everyone will attend from their own device or their personal computer, their smartphone, or their tablet or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is a great way to learn.
Our speakers are from all over the world, Norway, Australia, New Zealand, wherever, England. Glenn spoke last year at our
Glenn Burroughs.
Yeah, he's cool.
And it was the first time for him to do with video.
Right.
And he did a good job. We learned some things and how to. So every country that you work with, their internet and how it all functions, everything works a little bit different. So it was very successful event, but we had a little few challenges here and there, but it went
we know
really
about
good
that.
and
dealing with it
we
now.
learned a lot, Yeah.
You never know. Technically things are, they do what they do, but I was going to say, did Glenn have a plate of cheese scones next to him when he did this?
Well, The video just showed his PowerPoint, his presentation. We didn't get to see his face.
Oh. Well, I want to see, him and his scones. He loves his cheese scones. That's his thing. Cheese scones. Are you going to see him when you go to England?
Yeah, I'm going to see him.
Oh, cool.
It's going to be great. I'm excited to meet him.
Ask his wife Diane to make cheese scones. I want to report back. And when you're there, you have to have a Mr. Whippy ice cream for me too. Mr. Whippy.
I'll do a video biting them, going, yum.
Yeah, the cheese scones and Mr. Whippy ice cream. Must have the Mr. Whippy ice cream. It's a soft serve in a cone with a chocolate flake stuck right in the middle of it. It's really good. So I'm just saying, there's important things. When you're doing family history research, one must have nourishment, and cheese scones and Mr. Whippy ice cream, there's nothing wrong with that.
And steer clear of the mushy peas.
Now, Ruby, when you're doing all this research on your computer, do you have like a little kitchen cooler next to you or something? Do you get into that zone where you never leave?
No, but I haven't eaten in the kitchen for over a year. I always eat beside my computer because I'm so afraid I'm going to miss something.
Wow. You guys are like addicted, man. This is like a thing. Okay.
I commented to my daughter. She says, I brought this last storm on, but I commented to her the other day, I wish it would just snow and snow and snow. And I would just sit at the computer all day, and she said, it doesn't matter if it snows. She sat at the computer all day long.
Wow.
Okay, so ladies,
we need to have a workout for family historians.
Here's an idea. So Lisa and I are about to leave and trek across the country, back and forth in circles and crossing borders that we probably won't be allowed to cross.
Hanging out in graveyards for Holly.
Hanging out in graveyards and collecting
because we're too loud for libraries.
But so I'm going to research my family names as I'm doing this because now I'm getting like into this. Why don't you each give me a surname that I can also look for?
Ooh.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
Ooh.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, Denham, Denham, that's the one I'm working on right now.
Denham.
Can you write that down? Do you have a pen?
I don't have a pen. I don't know how to write.
I can't even.
I'll email you.
You email, yeah.
Okay.
Denham.
Oh,
okay.
Okay.
Denham. I like that. It sounds like a British name.
And the other?
I'm sure it is.
I want a ham sandwich.
Maybe Scottish.
Sandwich. Ruby, what about yours?
Well, I'm looking this up because I want to make sure that I am pronouncing it properly because it can be pronounced a variety of ways, and I certainly would not want you to get it all mixed up.
Trust me.
The lady's name is Goldilocks.
Oh my.
I'm sorry for laughing.
It's not Goldilocks. No, it's Goldilocks.
No, but you got to be careful how you say that.
Okay, you're gonna have to spell that.
It's Gudyllouch.
Wow.
And one time my husband and I went to this restaurant that we like to frequent, and he said, I get tired of them taking our reservation and then they holler out our name. And there was quite a waiting list, and I said, oh, I'll take care of it. So I went up and to the reservation desk, and I told her our name was Goldilocks. And so after about 10 minutes, he went up and he asked if there were any Coleman, and she said, we don't have anybody by that name. And he came back to where I was sitting and proceeded to inform me that I had forgotten to give him our surname. And I said, well, our surname tonight is Goldilocks. And when they finally called for the Goldilocks family, it was Goldillouch.
This sounds like half of the interviews I do on trying to pronounce people's names when they come on shows. I can't pronounce their names.
So will you email that to us?
Yeah.
Because we're packing up and I can't even find
Yeah.
pen.
If you do, I know. I'm looking around.
I'm looking around like this.
I've got a box. But anyway, but if you do that, we will find them.
Yeah.
You know, I think we'll start doing this.
Fun.
You might try in a restaurant. You know, you might try.
I like Goldilocks. I like that. It sounds like goulash. It's like Hungarian.
I know. Well, it sounds like Goldilocks or something, you know. But people can really slaughter it.
I have a feeling that we're going to find stuff in Texas.
Louisiana.
In Texas. I don't know why.
You're not going to find Goldilocks in Texas.
But maybe Louisiana.
Minnesota?
How about Virginia?
Okay, we'll go there. We're not
All
there
right,
yet.
you go there.
So so this goes to the whole thing. So, Holly, we've got the two names, right? So when we go to a town,
we'll start looking.
We need to just Google the name in the town that we're in. So, like, we have to type out Goldilocks and Delham. Delham? Did I get it right? And put the town name in and see what comes up. Like if there was a street name or a graveyard.
We'll go to the graveyard.
Yeah. How do you know in the graveyard? Do you just start walking around the graves, or do they have like a registry for the sites?
Well, old
Depends
ones you just start walking around the grave, but look for Goldilocks too.
And the three
Get
bears.
to look for all the variations.
We'll see the three bears. I know that. We're going to the sequoias again.
They might be there too.
I know. Gee, this is so cool. How much fun. Ladies, thank you so much for joining us. Such good information.
You.
And you know what? What's so exciting about it is a lot of what you're talking about are places where you're giving people tools that they really do need. Talking about the African American history, the Native American history, it's often so difficult. And so I think it's really exciting for those especially anybody getting in a dead end, understanding that there are other resources out there, and such a good one is the census. I had no idea. I never even thought of it. I just knew there were people knocking on the door to see if the right amount of people are living in your house. How I always looked at it. But everyone, again, go to Family-History-Expos.com, and you can learn more about all these different events. So there's the Ask the Pros every week. Of course, Third Friday Family History is always here on Big Blend Radio. You can go to BigBlendRadio.com for that. And also, Holly's article will be in the May through July issue of Big Blend Radio and TV magazine, but you'll see it right now if you go to BlendRadioandTV.com. Holly is featured in the expert department. Real quick, Ruby, I wanted to ask you this real quick. Because you are the president of the North Platte Genealogical Society, and you're Nebraska Genealogist of the Year from the Nebraska State Genealogical Society. When it's a genealogical society, is that open to anybody doing family history research, or is it all genealogists? Like, do we have to have a degree to be part of it?
Oh, no. Beginners on up.
Oh, cool. So, and then what do you do? Do you have meetings and start talking about scandals?
Well, my local society, we have meetings normally twice a month. I do a study group, which is an intense 2-hour study on a particular topic.
Okay.
Next month, they're bringing their laptops or their tablets, and we're really exploring ancestry. Then we have our regular meeting and another program.
Okay, so this is the
and we have projects. We have big time projects. My local society inherited a large estate, so we are well endowed, and we have digitized a lot of newspapers. I mean, big time local newspaper. We put a kiosk in the cemetery, and now we're taking on a project of putting obituaries on it. So I make them work. But they keep asking me to be president.
Obituaries are good. That gives you good info.
Yeah.
And sometimes, when you have all these online ones now, you'll start seeing all the other family that you may not know pop out of nowhere.
Right,
so
you do.
Well, it's interesting. I've friends who have passed on, I'm like, I didn't know that was your this or that, or Anyway, scandal. Sorry, I am nosy. It's interesting. I'm sorry,
well, thank
but
you
it's
for
interesting.
having me.
Thank you so much, ladies. We have a special song for you, and today's song is "Stepping Stones." And this is a song from Kimia Penton. She has lived all around the world: London, Lebanon. She's based in Texas now, and an incredible singer, songwriter, violin player. And this is from her latest album, Where the Rain Falls. And Stepping Stones, to me, when I listen to the words, it goes right to family history. So here it is, Stepping Stones. And everyone, you can keep up with Kimia at KimiaPmusic.com. Here it is.
My first steps were a celebration, Mom and Dad watching me grow. With every orbit of the sun, there's much more I got to know. As the seasons changed and I was fully grown, I was molded and made by the love they sowed. Mom and Dad's story didn't always make sense. They came from a different time with different pains, but the courage that I stand on is the example that they gave. My first stepping stones were the lives they led. 2 degrees later, moved out to the city on my own, working at the corner office on the 21st floor, thinking how far I come and where I could go, taking in the whole world, but I'm missing home. The road I traveled didn't always make sense. I wish for a different time, a better place. If I was building bridges, if I built a fence, Mom and Dad's wisdom was my one defense. If the noise in the world drowned out the voice in my head, I find my way home to hear the words they say. Those familiar words, the laughter and tears wash away my fears. Mom and Dad's story didn't always make sense. They came from a different time with different pains, but the freedom that I walk in is from the price they paid. My every stepping stone is on the road they paved. My stepping stones are from the lives they led.